Okay, peace to the external viewers outside of this class. Um, I'm gonna just go straight to the screen. This is International Law class for Moors, class number 3. Um, again, just for the sake of explaining what this class is, so everyone has an understanding, just in case this may be your first time. This class is open, free for anybody to come in, speak, and just build on strictly international law as the foundational basis of why we're here. And the contact information is on the screen. So let's start here. What I want to do is start off with a series of timelines just to catch everybody up on the basis of international law again. And mind you, this is part 3, so this is not exactly from the origin point as we went over in the previous videos, but we're still working with the foundational basis of international law in Law Class 3. So Law Class 2, to catch everybody up, was we went over the French Protectorate letter, the letters between France and the United States of America. Okay, these letters were started off in 1912, 1913, okay, right after the Treaty of Fez was created, which gave France the power, which is actually called the power of attorney over Moroccan affairs. Why? Because Morocco was falling as a government. And so certain treaties, provisions, etc., were set up. Now, there's a number of reasons as to why they were set up. You know, they weren't just set up from the good-hearted, act or anything like that. But nonetheless, this is a divine process for the Moors who are ready to wake up to it right now. So we went over the letters. The letters basically explained that Moors, or let's just say Moors here in America, so-called, or Moors here in Morocco, are Moor subjects or proteges under a government until they have a government of their own. So this was a letter saying, hey, we went, and I'm just going up until where we stopped at. This was a letters between France and the United States of America. France saying, hey, we're the power of attorney. Basically recognize everything that got you here. United States responded in several manners, stating several things, saying, hey, France, you're not in a treaty of peace and friendship. How can you govern what's going on over here? Right? So as we know, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between Morocco and United States of America, or Moors and Americans, right? After time, France became, due to us falling again, the power of attorney. So this gives some people a weary feel or weary perception as to how things are to move, how things are to properly do a process, how we go about do a process as far as Moors. So first off, we got to create a state government, right? That's the only reason these court cases are going about how they're going about, is because we haven't established a court case or established a state government. So those previous law class number 2, those previous letters that we went over, was basically France saying, hey, these are Moorish subjects and proteges who are supposed to be under the authority of France. so we can govern them how, according to how the treaties are set up. But due to our own treaties, not anybody else's, our own Moroccan treaties, we are Moroccan subjects and proteges nonetheless. Okay. So this is not anybody else's idea, more subjects or proteges. This is Moroccan law, specifically in the Treaty of Madrid. Okay, so I'm going to start off for Law Class 3, going over this timeline, which is 3 slides, and then we'll get into the actual finishing of the letters. Okay, so a series of events. British subjects established companies in Morocco, then flee from the British Crown. So we're talking about the Virginia Company and all the companies they set up, right, throughout those years when they came over as colonists, right? They fled from the British Crown. So they were given a charter by law. They were given a charter and ran off with that. So this is pretty much the origin point, right? So we always have to work with how we're angling back to this, the truth of that matter. Okay, so they're British subjects, right? To start off. Time went on, right? Many things happened, and I'm giving you just a quick few snapshots, if you will. The Treaty of Fort Pitt, right, which was with what some of us know as the Lenape Moors, or the Delaware Moors. In this treaty, in Article 3, it basically gave the Lenape Moors protection, or the United States got protection from the Lenape Moors because they were fighting Great Britain still. They were still running. So they made a treaty, right? So let's go to this treaty right quick. In Article 3. Article 3 of the Treaty of Fort Pitt with the Lenape Moors reads, and whereas the United States are engaged in a just and necessary war in defense and support of life, liberty, and independence against the King of England and his adherents, as said, the king is yet possessed of several posts and forts on the lakes of other places. So it goes on to say, basically, they're in need of protection because they're wanting independence from the Lenape Moors. And I just want to read just those few first lines just to give you because it's pretty clear after that point. So you can screenshot this if you want, take further notes on it if you like in your own time. But I'm just giving you a snapshot so we can get to where we're going, right? So, and if you want me to go back to something, just let me know. So this was in 1778, the Treaty of Fort Pitt, right? So in 1778, they already created a treaty before the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. So these British subjects created a treaty. Well, hold on. Didn't we speak in the first class that treaties are between states? Treaties are between states, which means actual governments. Not just random people looking for protection coming up. A group of people. Obviously they're different, et cetera, et cetera. But you may even know who they are. But that doesn't mean they're a state and this treaty is lawful, right? So they're making a treaty with Fort Pitt. Years go by. The Treaty of Paris, which was Great Britain, used the terms United States and British subjects interchangeably in this treaty. Okay, as noted on the screen. So in 1783, Great Britain seen and acknowledged United States for their attempts, but they basically wrapped it up. The reason being, they said United States and British subjects interchangeably, saying that yes, you can be that, and you still are what you are, because they said basically after reading the whole treaty, and again we'll look over these treaties more extensively another time, specifically for another class, but Great Britain said, yeah, you can be that. You can be this United States or whatever, as long as you handle the truth of the matter. So if you read the treaty, it's honestly, to me, in my opinion, quite funny, because as serious as they want it to be, it's still, it still only holds so much value or so much weight in truth of the matter. Okay, so they're already British subjects still, right? They made a treaty with the Lenape Moors, even though it's supposed to be governments only. Then they came back, boom, boom, boom. Great Britain caught them, said, okay, you can. Somebody's phone is causing a serious echo. It might be mine. Okay, so Treaty of Paris, right? It was Great Britain acknowledging them, right? But said, yeah, after this war that we're going through, after you handle your British subject situation that you ran off with, right, a few decades ago, right? So um, then the Treaty of Peace and Friendship comes about. Okay, now let's mind you, it's not like we have internet and we were basically going off of good faith and integrity, honesty. You know what I mean? And we're recognizing people at the surface level that they present themselves as the deepest level that they say they are. Because it's not like these treaties are posted online for everybody to see, etc. So a treaty of peace and friendship was created between who? Moors and Americans, right? Or previously the Articles of Confederation or the Continental Congress, whatever you want to call them, right? But they later became what's known as United States of America, right? So for us to be American anything is the trick bag. American Indian, Moorish American, it's a combination because it all has to stem from international law. Where in treaty does it say this Moor is a citizen or can be a citizen of this government? Only then give you the leeway in a lawful sense to say, okay, I am, whatever you say you are, Moorish American, Italian American, whatever you say you are, right? So, but it has to be a citizenship clause, a binding article, a binding paragraph in the treaty that says this is the bridge between the two parties. So George Washington's letter into the Sultan in 1789, right? And I'm kind of just breezing through this. Was basically, hey, we want to call ourselves Americans now. Sultan said, okay, as long as I get my money, basically, right? So shortly after the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which was already the United States saying, hey, we're a government, but in truth of the matter, they were still British subjects. They are British subjects. Okay. So, but this is already going on a set up foundation by this point now, right? So now we'll get to that point. So shortly after the letter to the Sultan, the Naturalization Act of 1790 was created. As you can see, created to denationalize the Moors in the treaties. Okay. So it began to naturalize the Moors. How? By way of beginning to create things for Moors to fall for the trick bag. So not only was the Naturalization Act, but they began to create ways to declassify, social engineer. Later on in the 1800s, when they really got control of things, that's when people began to fall for dictionaries. Oh, I'm an American because I'm copper colored. So the social engineering began to take place throughout the 1800s, right? But this was the beginning of it. So the Naturalization Act of 1790, then we have the Alien Enemy Act of 1798. So soon as they created the treaty, basically, they turned around and began to denationalize, do everything they said they would, as soon as they did. So they knew, right? Now let's think about this. It's always a two-sided coin. The other half is because there was pirates repeatedly looting, right? Our empire was a part of the over there in Northwest Africa, which it still is, right? But it's due to moral character of the continents, moral character of the government, everything, right? It's pirates kept looting, et cetera, making it hard for the United States to even maintain a government in all reality. So it's always two sides to things. Always two sides to things. Okay, always. Um, so the Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1836. This was 50 years after the Treaty of Peace and Friendship in 1786, 1787. Right. In 1836 was 50 years, in which began another 50-year agreement, which brings us to 1886 later, 50 years later. And in that time frame, a 12-month, a year-to-year basis was basically established for the treaty. So now, as we speak, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship is set up to be on a year-to-year basis. How do we know that? Well, if you go to Article 25 of not only the 1786 Treaty of Peace and Friendship, but the 17 or the in the 1836, you got to compare the two. They're worded differently, right? If you read this one of 1786, this one right here on the screen, it says, "This treaty shall continue in full force with the help of God for 50 years. We have delivered this book in the hands," and what basically we can read on. At the end, it basically says for 50 years, right? So that's that. This is from the article of 1836 Treaty of Peace and Friendship, in which you can see that it reads that the treaty shall continue in full force with the help of God for 50 years, after the expiration of which terms the treaty shall continue to be binding on both parties until one shall give 12 months notice to the other of the intention to abandon it, which case its operation shall cease, at the end of the 12 months. So it's on a year-to-year basis, right? So when you create your governments, what happens? What happens? The United States or anybody else has up to a year to basically rebut that. Okay. And so when we start our get enough governments. Yeah, go ahead.
So if say either the more some a representative from the United States decided they want to terminate the treaty, right? How know that had happened? Because I'm looking at it like if we're saying that it's still in force, they are saying that the treaty they have with Morocco Kingdom. And I know that's not correct, but that's what they're saying. And I know that's not correct, but that's what they're saying, right? How would we know if the treaty was terminated or not, and who did it?
Hold on, just a second. I gotta get my hearing situation clear. Sorry for that. Oh, I gotta go back to my.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Now, what were you saying?
I was saying when it comes to this, saying that either the Moors or the United States can terminate the treaty as long as we give 12 months notice to other parties. How if one or the other actually did pull out of the treaty.
Okay. I'm actually gonna mute everybody's mic. That might be what's causing the static on my end. But okay, so that's an excellent question. Um, we'll know because once we establish a state government, we'll be sending letters right back and forth to the ICJ or the UN. So once you begin to operate yourself, or you guys as a state government wherever you are, you'll then be able to express full powers. So you yourself, as well as the Moors that you're with, will know by how you're setting yourselves up on your own records, on your on the however you establish yourselves as a government. Now, when we're talking about going to the United Nations websites and depending on their TVs or their streams of information, the news or anything like that, we're not talking about being supported in that manner, because that manner is again from their website, from their platforms. Okay, so when we're talking about going up to look up, the United Nations website and to see, that the only non-member states are, only two, random non-member states, whoever they are. Um, again, we're talking about establishing ourselves as a certain because for one, in order to establish ourselves, it can't be one state. It has to be us as a union in order for that to happen, really, in a holistic manner. So we can't be on United Nations website as just one more state government, because we see, three of them are more state governments right now, but we don't see them on United Nations website. But it takes all of us to come and unite as one, so then we can say like the United States of America instead of one state out of them or a couple states. We have to move as one unit first and form our own continental, central government. And then once we establish a central government, we go to the United Nations and we'll, be on that level, to establish things as far as who's going where, who's really going where. Until then, you'll be able to dictate what's in your boundaries until the rest of the more state governments get online. So as far as the reality of, um, the lion laying with the lamb, if you will, at least for the time being, that'll only be for so long until, again, as Noble Drali said, the Europeans go back to Europe. But it has to be, we can't enact all laws at once. It has to be a due process of everything. It takes a year for, anybody, including the United States, to, rebut the information, to say, hey, this more state government over here, they was, establishing themselves. Hold on, we was working on ourselves too. Hold on. Y'all find out about each other, say, hey, okay, we'll form as one. We'll work together. That's all it's all about, right? Love, et cetera, et cetera. So, and you establish yourself as, if that's the case, and you move forward from there, right? But everything is a due process as far as what laws to enact. So then, like, we have to establish ourselves in a certain way. So then, when they go back to Europe, we're established enough. We already know what to do with what we have here, because then we ain't gonna tear the stuff down. That ain't the whole thing to loot everything and let burn up Babylon, and that's the system. You know what I'm saying? Like that can go. But as far as them going back to Europe, and what laws to enact, and when we gonna stop paying rent, and all the stuff like that, it's a certain due process to each law. Even though it's already enacted, we have to enforce it, which is its own process, right? Because we got to have if we got prisoners, break outlaws, we got to have somewhere to put them. You know what I'm saying? So even though we're recognized, some of us may be recognized as a more state government, we have to establish ourselves and develop ourselves in such manner that's really just it's going to take work, but not as much work as people say it is once they read the law, because the knowledge is a lot of times already right there at hands. It's just about the effectiveness, the organization, the people, the unity, you know. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, the 12-month basis, each state they'll put, they notice on, hey, I'm a more state government. They'll have a 12-month basis, and then boom, that's it for that boundary. And then we all do it as one, move as one, and then go to the court, say, hey, the house should be clean like this, right? And the house will get clean like that. So now this is, I can't do it no other way but to get that stuff off my screen sometimes. But so to continue the timeline, in 1868, right, the 14th Amendment was created to declassify the Moors, and then the Civil War was created during the was starting to brew up, and it was a distraction. Okay, so the 14th Amendment created, right, made people corporations, persons, corporations. In 1871, the United States Corporation was created, so they can again undermine the treaties, further establish themselves to undermine the treaties. In 1880, the Treaty of Madrid was about the Moroccan government and nationality. Okay, now this instance was, again, it was a divine setup. It was a Moroccan law, this Moroccan treaty, Moroccan legislation. In Article 15 of this treaty, it speaks on how Moors can proclaim their nationality back to a Moroccan state government. Right. Now we're gonna get further into that because I highlighted this for a reason, because they knew that Article 15 was of highly importance, so they had to do certain things later. So France, behind the scenes with the League of Nations, set this up, this whole article, or this whole treaty, excuse me, in Madrid. Right. Now, remind you, this is already, at the time, France and United States of America, even though when they came here and soon established themselves as, the head government, or tried to, you know, as you may read in the history books, the relationship from France, the Revolutionary War, all these French and Indian wars, it was an up and down relationship. But in this class today, at the very end of class today, is what we're going to get clear as the relinquishment of the United States, the jurisdiction in Morocco, what that was all about. Because we got to remember, and why France has a good part of this, because we're going to clear a lot of that up. Because a lot of the Moors, when it comes to these documents, it's like partial when they read it. Because if you don't know international law, you're not going to see the other side of it to know what he was talking about. So the Act of Algeciras, right, in 1906, right, this was later after 1880, the Treaty of Madrid. It was Moroccan government and authority, right? That's what the treaty was about. The Act of Algeciras. It was about tax. It was about basically the Moroccan government keeping its independence, because a lot of crazy stuff was happening at that time, as far as over in Africa, right? They get the Kingdom of Morocco right now, was known as the Kingdom of Morocco, but at the time it was just Moroccan Empire. It established the Act of Algeciras, basically with the laws that was created, established a state bank, a Moroccan state bank, and which now is under the authority of, it has a French name and all that type of stuff. So because Morocco was being governed, or that it was France was the power of attorney over Morocco. So when it came to our affairs and stuff, since we was falling stagnant, they were in charge when it came to other nations. So that's why France and United States of America case is going to be so important, because due to our own treaties and stuff like that, this is why we see them jumping first and nobody else. Okay. So a Moroccan state bank was set up in 1907. Okay. And this state bank allowed France, Germany, and England to basically not loot Morocco. You know, they had to handle affairs in a certain fashion. Okay. So, but again, now mind you, at this time though, Morocco was, now I will tell you this, the history of Morocco at that time, the Sultan over in what's now the Kingdom of Morocco, right? During this time in 1907, it was Abdul Aziz, Mulai El Hafid, and their father, right, who preceded them as Sultan. Now, their father was a good sultan, but when they got into the hands of Abdul Aziz, this was, if you read up on him, in a book called The Fall of Sharifian Empire. He basically was a very incompetent sultan who was basically came about um, from a woman in a harem and a Moor. And, you know, he got the complexion, the look of what today's Turks, or the TV, on TV, what they say the Turks are. He had that type of complexion, phenotype, etc. So this Sultan had did things like he put teddy bears and, you know, did a lot of like childish, like unbelievably childish things. So the officials from other nations, seeing how things were going, seeing how things were falling, said the Act of Algeciras is to be set up, right? So 1906, the Citizenship of United States Expatriation and Protection Abroad. This is a letter from the Secretary of State, a submitting report, basically stating that, hey, these people that, you know, we call everything else are more subjects and proteges, and according to the laws instead of, I think we need to kind of pay attention to this and kind of tell the truth a little bit, right? So of course that didn't happen. The name changes kept changing, obviously. In 1912, the Treaty of Fez made France the protectorate of Morocco. Okay. So after or before, we had the setup of, you know, basically France, they had so much power, in which when it came to the Treaty of Fez, it gave them absolute power to be power of attorney over Morocco. Okay, so it built up until 1912, until they were then the most favored nation, or the favored nation clause. Okay. Then shortly after that, 1914, World War I began as a distraction. Okay. Now, this was on behalf of the United States, social engineering, etc., because they knew that France was starting to, you know, steer things in the direction that's not favorable for the United States. Why? Because this letter that we're gonna continue today shortly, specifically, it made United States say, hey, we're actually subordinate to France now. Because if Morocco is being governed, if France is the power of attorney for Morocco, that means as far as us, we're definitely subordinate to them. The United States of America didn't want to do that, right? So, of course, 1914, here comes a distraction. We need to stir up just as they are now, just as Japan is leaving and forfeiting their government now, et cetera, because really, truth of the matter is that it's a lot of karma coming. That's the truth of the matter. It's a lot of karma coming, and with ANPAC being the first Moorish state government after their year of recognizing that, hey, United States acquiesced, right? A lot of stuff is changing. A lot of stuff is changing right now. So this is the last slide as far as the timeline. Foreign relations of the United States diplomatic papers in 1943 came about, right? This was France reaching out to the United States of America, right? Again, trying to check them. Then we have Muhammad V met with the United States President Roosevelt. Now we're going up to the relinquishment type phase, okay, into that, understanding that. Because behind closed doors, and again, you can read books on this. Muhammad V, as it says, met with the president. Why? Because he wanted to become independent as they are today. This is how they became independent. How were they going to do that? Well, they had to work hand in hand and say, hey, if the whole world knows that the Moors here in this land needs to come up and create their Moor state governments, well, that's the whole thing about was with the Kingdom of Morocco. They had to keep us down. They had to say, hey, look, United States of America, we realized that y'all can be out of there. Not only if I say so, but if these Moors say so in their land, it's really over with, right? You know that, right? Oh yeah. Because how's life set up for the Sultan to even realize that? Everybody thinks that the British subjects are sovereign. That's the only reason that conversation is going like that. The reality is going like this. Everybody is treating them like they're sovereign because we ain't said nothing. That's the only reason, because we ain't said nothing yet. So, at least in the right standpoint. Okay. So, Muhammad V met with the president, said, hey, man, I think we can work together, right? In 1945, the ICJ was created because the United Nations began to, hey, peep some things, right? Now, mind you, France is a great reason why the United Nations is the United Nations today. They got a lot of power. Okay. So they was like, yo, hold on. United States ain't going nowhere? Okay. Well, guess what? We want peace. I think a lot of other governments do too. Right? So boom, United Nations. Which was really, it started before that. It was called the League of Nations. But grew into the United Nations. Okay. So and after that, the Sultan V proclaimed he plans for independence in 1947 with assistance from United States and Great Britain. Okay. So he actually declared the independence to come. In 1948, the United Nations made human rights in Article 15 saying that everybody has the right to nationality. So, okay, if the Sultan said, hey, we got independence coming soon as a third state party, right? Our own government, and we can use the treaty. That's why they still get acknowledged today as, hey, you're the Morocco that recognized us. This the treaty, right, that you can use today, right? Because you got your government, right? You got this, this, and that. You get all the credit for Morocco because you set yourself up right. Meanwhile, us over here in so-called America, properly called Morocco, are looking like what's going on, right? So in 1948, the United Nations said, hey, everybody has the right to claim nationality. So they over here trying to set it up again. France has a lot of power behind this, a lot of influence. So they trying to nudge at us. Hey, yo, everybody has a right to nationality. Okay, better get on it. You can do something about this, right? In 1950, France versus United States of America case began over jurisdiction, taxation, and Moorish status. So France said, yo, enough is enough. We gave them enough time to say, hey, look, 2 years went by. Look, we just about to bring it to you now. We taking you out of court. All right. We gonna try to get you out of there ourselves. Right. Let's see how much this will help. So the case began, right, and it began to, as it says, really be about taxes and the status of Moors. So it called us Moors proteges and Moor subjects. Okay. Now, again, we can be French subjects, Spanish subjects, English subjects, British subjects, whatever. You can be a subject of your own government, right, wherever you are. But in this case, Moor subject, the term Moor subject was a double or triple entendre, because not only was a Moor subject, it's just somebody who's supposed to be a part of a Moor state government, but since we were subjugated under the United States, Moor subject took a different stance. So it was a triple entendre, right? So Moor subject is actually what we know as the straw man. What a lot of people know as the straw man. The thing that is kind of like us, right? Type of thing, like, God created us in our image type of effect. The whole Yadala broth thing. So in 1952, the ICJ allowed the United States authority to remain capitulation regime over Moor subjects and proteges. Now hold on. Now we're getting closer to the relinquishment, right? The relinquishment of the United States and Morocco, right? Because in 1952, it was decided by the International Court themselves, whatever you want to say, those 15 judges, that United States of America is in the wrong. Yes, it was made clear several points, several times. But they can remain capitulation regime, and we about to get into exactly what that means here in a second, over Moorish subjects and proteges. Why? Because we haven't created our own Moorish state governments to say this is how we're going to govern things. This is how we run in our land, right? We forgot we taught y'all government, and not to just fall subject to y'all's and incorporate ourselves with y'all's. No. We're taking it a step higher, right? We're not only going to do what you're doing, but do what you're scared to do, which is do this stuff better, right? So in 1952, the international court case, now we have the limits. We see the limits now. It's been set up. It's been structured. It's drawn out. That they can remain here as long as we haven't set up anything. It was called capitulation regime. Now, what does this mean? Where did I thought I took a picture. Okay, capitulation regime. In the history of international law, any treaty whereby one state permitted to exercise extraterritorial jurisdiction over its own nationals within the former state's boundaries, The term is to be distinguished from a military term, capitulation, an agreement for surrender. Now, why is this set up? Because we acquiesced. We fell for a lot of trick bags, thinking that we were African American, thinking that we were Mexicans, thinking that we were whatever, black, Negro, colored, whatever, Ethiopian, Afro American. You see how much they had to renew stuff as they dug deeper. So capitulation regime is we got one more slide on the timeline. Is actually the process of us, in our case, us surrendering by way of acquiescence. So due to our own Moroccan governments, our own Moroccan laws in the past, our own Moroccan treaties, our own legislation, it says, hey, these are more subjects and they're protectors, meaning they're protected by somebody's government and they have some type of rights. These rights are called, well, we're going to get to that in the next point. These rights are called, in 1954, the Convention relating to the status of stateless persons. So even stateless persons have rights to a degree in international law, right? This is the whole civil rights thing. So this is in 1954. Say, hey, you're going to have to protect these people in one way or another. Like, you ain't about to just totally get over with this and get these people to where they have absolutely no protection and you can do absolutely anything that you want. No. So in 1956, United States of America relinquished jurisdiction in Morocco. The same now. Why did they relinquish jurisdiction in Morocco? Because they were ordered to by the court, but they can keep capitulation regime over the subjects. Okay, let's think more about this picture in a holistic sense. In 1956, United States of America relinquished jurisdiction in Morocco. The same year, the Sultan Mohammed V gained independence after signing the Franco-Moroccan agreement or treaty in Paris in 1956. So hold on. Somebody's backdooring something. You telling me that after Mohammed V met up several occasions in 1933, etc., said, hey, United States of America, I think we can work as a team, right? You help me give me my independence or our independence in Kingdom of Morocco, and we'll help you stay there and be more prominent, right? We'll look at your news videos, news interviews when you say, hey, Morocco, thanks, etc., etc. All the time, and continue to do business with you, right? As long as you let us be a third state party and use this treaty of peace and friendship. So they gain independence, right? So hold on. Now France is like, hold on. We still got to do something though, because the Moroccan Empire is over here too. This is the empire. So hold on. All these French wars and Indian wars is somewhat starting to make sense, right? It's an up and down relationship on whose behalf though. Because when we say Moroccan Empire, well, we see the split now. On whose behalf in the Moroccan Empire? What became the Kingdom of Morocco, or you talking about us over here, right? So now in 1956, right, United States of America had to relinquish jurisdiction. But since ain't nobody saying nothing, they still here. The lion just gonna lay with the lamb and grow into learn its lion, learn its responsibilities, right? And herd the sheep back to Europe. So in 1958, the Article 15 in And so I hope that answered everybody, clearly, and we're gonna get more of that into more videos on the relinquishment of United States. Yes, they, you know, by law they're not they relinquish jurisdiction, but guess who has to enforce the treaty on between the two? This ain't nobody land but ours. Ain't nobody about to come over here and work stuff for us. And they ain't even got nothing to do with the treaty. They can't even come over here. No state can interact with another state just up like that. It was no agreement like that. So in 1958, Article 15 was struck from the text of the Treaty of Madrid relating to nationality. So the Treaty of Madrid, as I talked about earlier, as I mentioned earlier, the Treaty of Madrid, and I'm gonna allow everybody to ask questions after this this page right here, if there are any or comments. This Treaty of Madrid, Article 15, it was struck, meaning it was hidden. Okay, so while they were communicating, right, the Sultan in the United States of America, they say, yo, this Article 15, it says all they got to do is proclaim nationality and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, we're gonna have to do something about that. So it was struck. It was hidden, right? You know how some things easily just taken off the internet today, right? Imagine back then easily how it could have been done. But in 1959, the Declaration of the Rights of a Child came about. Now, Article 8 says the child has the right to a nationality. Why? Because the United States had Moors as minorities. What's a minority? That's a child. Okay, United Nations said, you want to play that game? You want to be childish? Okay. Well, guess what? Children have the right to a nationality, aka minorities. Now, black people say, hey, the minorities, we the minorities, right? So, United Nations said, you want to get childish? Okay. We're going to do what we got to do. So, in the early 1960s, was a series of rights for stateless persons, such as the civil rights, voting rights, etc. Okay, so you had things set up for these stateless persons. So you at least got to give them something. In 1969, Vienna Convention says everyone must have a state. So they drawing the line. Everyone must have a state. We yelling state. This is when the Moors start to wake up to a certain degree, right, in the communities. Say, hold on. COINTELPRO start to shine hard. So, in which was his own form of war. So let's get to these to what class is really about today. Just a second. Okay. So this is we read this in last class. We actually should get out. But we read this in last class, and this is just a brush up on what we have yet to read. Okay, and this is from the letters. This is from the letters of France, between France and the United States of America, in regards to the French Protectorate. Okay, over Morocco. So the British and Spanish treaties mentioned in Article 1 of Madrid Convention are presumably generally Treaty of December 9th, 1856 between Great Britain and Morocco, and the Treaty of Commerce and Navigation of November 20th, 1861 between Spain and Morocco. In the British treaty, it is specifically provided that the charge d'affaires and the consular officers of Great Britain shall be at liberty to choose to their own employees, they call them employees, right? And the British subjects shall be free. So it's saying, okay, the United States can be that, but the their British subjects that shall be free, in quotations, shall be free. Why'd they put this in quotations in the letters? Because they're not actually sovereign. Shall be free, quotations. To commit their affairs, to make management of any persons who may they appoint as their broker, factor, or agent, nor, says the treaty, shall such British subjects be restrained in. So there's a lot of quotations going on, right? So they're saying that anybody they want to appoint as their agent or become a part of their what they got going on, shall such British subjects be restrained in their choice of persons to act in such capacities. The Spanish treaty provides that the charge d'affaires or consul general may choose his interpreters and servants for amongst the Mussulman subjects. So Moor subjects, Muslim subjects, same thing. They hinting at a lot of things here. They calling us a lot of names, right? So it's basically staying by saying Muslim subjects. When it comes to state, remember state is state of mind, state of Allah, but state also means government. So when we talk about state, we're talking about not only your so-called religion that everybody try to make the predominant topic, in which in a sense it is, but it's only half discussion. And really that's private law. You ain't got to go around thinking that your religion reigns. That's your opinion. That's private law. That's conversation between you and your friends when y'all after work doing your own thing. There ain't nothing for real duty stages, right? In a sense, you just call that government, in which they become one. Everything becomes one. No religion is to rule. Islam just means under one. Everything works as one. You coming from the one, I, self, law, and master. You coming back to yourself, but we all giving into a same state, a same person. This our medium point to God. It's going to align peace on earth so we can see more of God's expressions, right? That's what a covenant or a treaty does. It protects you, gives you prosperity, gives you a closer spirit to God, etc., right? And which I posted about the other day. And we'll go into that more into metaphysics of law, specifically in another class. So it says the Muslim subjects or amongst those of any other country, that of other consular officers may name employees either Muslim or subjects of another country, and the Spanish merchants may put their affairs into the hands of brokers or agents appointed by themselves, and they shall not be interfered with, nor shall obstacles be raised to the free choice of the persons to fulfill this charge. It would therefore seem that the choice of the proteges of the United States in Morocco. So see how they word that triple entendre kind of. The proteges, i.e. the more subjects, the protected people. Who are the protected people? Well, protected people are usually called citizens or proteges, being protected by something. What is that something? The government. Okay, so people who don't have a government of their own, none the least, i.e. us, being protected by the United States because we don't have none of our own. Who we being protected by? Who army you depend on to come on and stop some shit? Because you say, hey, man, this is my land, you and my shit, I'm supposed to tell you what to do. I make you my trustee because of this trust I set up, you the one that got the stuff. You on my land, I'll tell you what to do, type of thing. Now, we don't work from half, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. No. We ain't ask for that. Not no more. Everything is nice and clear for us to start and be independent and have enough support to still for us to do what we do independently in a sovereign capacity. So the proteges of the United States, the protected people, or the stateless people, that's being protected of the United States that's in Morocco, right, rests by right of treaty ultimately with this government. So the Treaty of Peace and Friendship and other treaties. Such appears to be the view which the department has always taken of this convention of 1880, the Treaty of Madrid, and which has been the basis of its action in carrying out the provisions of the convention. The question of choice of proteges is, however, in the view of this government, but a phase of the larger question involved in the establishment of the French and Spanish control over separate protections in Morocco. On the subject of the French Protectorate, this government has heretofore expressed itself as being in favor of the reforms which France contemplated introducing into Morocco in accordance to the stipulations of the Franco-Moroccan Treaty, March 30th, 1912. It's talking about the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. Okay, so this is the conversation that they're having, basically to put out everything on the line, right? On the understanding that the provision be made for the preservation of American interests and rights in Morocco, commercial or otherwise, which are at present safeguarded by existing treaties with the country. So it's at present safe, because ain't nobody said that. The more important of these interests and rights, it is proper now to enumerate. Now here where it gets juicy. In the first place, attention may be drawn to the right of aliens to hold land in the Sharifian Empire. So now this is a Sharifian Empire, and they saying, well, in the first place, attention may be drawn to the rights that y'all have, the aliens, to hold land in here. This is where the whole problem is. What they say, y'all got everybody else to seem like they the alien, because they got the Moors to think they Americans now. So when they thinking aliens, they not talking about the actual Americans. When the actual Americans is the aliens. United States of America, continental conquerors, the colonists. Though they are the aliens. So they got everybody to join face with them, because they'll never have no real substance. As long as you think y'all on the same, we think we on the same ground, right? We gonna think, oh shit, everybody good. We all rocking peacefully, right? You American, I'm American. You know who say we your parents? We come from, we your great parents. Germany, I'm European. And in 1 second, they'll literally say, I'm American. Next moment they say, I'm German, I'm European. Be like, hold on, what? Like literally. And won't even catch it. But won't say they're German American or European American. And it's like, it's a big miss. But well, let me ask everybody if anybody has any questions. Right quick. That stuff ain't charging like that.
Actually, kind of have questions, but it's not so much what speaking on right now. Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I'm wondering how did the people here, the tribes here, end up Moroccan Empire? How did that happen? Like, was it by their consent? Or were they conquered?
Yeah, it was a lot was by conquering, social engineering. The treaties that you may read about that are in your area. You know, you might have the treaty of whatever your county is or whatever, you know. So a lot of treaties that you can read up on in your area that are actually what's called the dummy treaties. Okay, so they're not treaties that were handled in the actual lawful, correct international level, right? That's why when we seen the Treaty of Fort Pitt, as we went over earlier, between the United States and the Lenape Moors, well, they weren't even called the United States then, and they were actually just a group of people who were refugees, and they needed protection. So it doesn't make them an actual government or nothing like that. It's just they tricked their way, faked their way till they made their way, right? So when it comes to the tribes, we have a number of reasons as to why things happen, because we have tribes that were more so indigenous to this land than other tribes. We had tribes being aimed at more because of that reason. And I actually went over, and this is kind of off topic, but in my video that I did, World Beyond the Walls, Part 2, I actually spoke on and showed maps of uh, the land in Antarctica. And on one of the maps, it said Phoenicians. So it said, this is where the Phoenicians are in this land of Antarctica. So the people who crossed the river, right, just as the people who crossed their way from Europe to so-called America, right, are known as, or people who made their way beyond, another ocean or wall or whatever, are known as, exactly what they did, Hebrew, people who crossed the river. So when we're talking about, tribes mainly from the west side of Morocco, or so-called America, we're talking about mainly Moors who are, you know, uh, really from so-called quote unquote Asia. A lot of times they have those type of affiliations. A lot of times in South America, so-called, a lot of times, or South Morocco, if you want to call it. And then we have on the east side, it's just a lot of, you got people that sound like Maryland or sound like they from Europe over Maryland, so they'll a lot of memes is funny about that. But so you kind of got those types of relations depending on the tribe. It's a lot of ways is how the Sharif Empire really feel and got dissected. But over on the east side of the Morocco, right, we had the 13 colonies. So we see how those pretty much got affected by war and stuff like that, while the west side still pretty much had freedom for the longer than anybody else on this land, and had more um, of a controlled standpoint up until a certain degree. So of course they got conquered when, before United States came, but they still had a controlled standpoint up until a certain degree due to you know what Spain was doing wasn't what United States was doing. They wasn't set up like that. They had to come in and kill everybody, opposed to the United States. There was treaties and stuff already set up to say, okay, you can come here then. You already kind of bulldoze your way, but this ain't gonna be Christopher Columbus Part 2, to where you ain't got nothing established. You just really coming out here making your own way in everything, you know. So it kind of varies as part of what tribes you're talking about. Because when we talking about tribes, we're talking about families, communities that are still subordinate to actual government, and at that time the governments weren't operating how they operate today, right? So over here we have more of an ancient natural way of democracy, whereas everybody was their own king. We can govern ourselves more so. That's what democracy truly is. It's nothing bad. The United States make it seem bad, but our character is not upright enough. We don't show enough love enough, and we don't carry enough accountability and responsibility enough for us to operate in that manner anymore. So now, um, as it's been for thousands and thousands and thousands of years in many areas, the Republican form of government, in which you have a certain office, a certain setup, certain people to go to, a certain group that'll handle your affairs to handle the affairs. So throughout time, it went through many ups and downs as far as to what tribes, how they handle themselves, in what areas. You had the Wild Wild West being invaded from people in the East more so, right? So you had those tribes being used against those tribes, because this tribe in the East was pretty much like, all right, look, We worn out. We give up. We just we have to side with them pretty much. You know, yeah, try to West like, yo, we still out here, man. It's wild out here for them. You know, we holding it down though. You know what I mean? They gotta loot us over here. You know what I'm saying? That's why I said they had, a lot of more stable foundation in the West. But so it pretty much varies when you're talking about the tribes. We kind of got to get way direct now. When we say ancestors, it's like, who are we talking about? Because it's too vast. That's too vast of a word, you know. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. So we can get back to this and where it got juicy at. Um, it says this right appears now to be based on the provisions of the Madrid Convention and the Algeciras Act. So this just means that we got to study the Algeciras Act soon, right? If they're them holding land, these aliens, United States of America, are holding land in the Sharifian Empire, this land. Well, we got to look at the Act of Algeciras, right? They lined it up for us. That's why this stuff is important for the read, so we can know what order to put it in. So, Act of Algeciras, well, we're going to read in that another time, but it says, with a view to carry out Article 60 of the Act of the Algeciras Act, the Sultan's foreign minister on December 5th, 1912, sent to the diplomatic courts at Tangier a set of regulations classifying the public domain of the empire, defining inalienable property and alienable property, right? So on the public domain, meaning that he deposited, did everything he's supposed to do at Tangier, so everybody can be notified in that sense. Going through their, boats and all that stuff. And Tartarian technology, so-called, is one. That's the whole nother topic. But these regulations also laid down certain rules to govern the sale of the latter class of property to foreigners. It is understood that these regulations are not entirely consistent with the provisions on the subject of land ownership in the Act of Algeciras and the Convention of Madrid. So they're saying it's obviously not aligned. Obviously, that's why we mentioned it. Under Article 11 of the Madrid Convention, the right of all foreigners to hold property anywhere in the empire is recognized, but the purchase of property must take place with the previous consent of the government. So without the Moroccan government's consent, they can't purchase no property. And they never did that. So everything is ours, right? So by Article 60 of the Act of the Algeciras Act, this right was confirmed, and it was further provided that within a radius of 10 kilometers around the open ports and within 2 kilometers around certain other towns, land might be acquired by foreigners. So they said, okay, this is where y'all, according to this article, this is where y'all can decide. We ain't anything else. This 10 kilometers on the outside of the open ports, within 2 kilometers. Now, no, you stop within 2 kilometers of the town, homeboy. Right? So, without the previous consent of the Moorish government, the proposed regulations define inalienable property to include guiche lands, the seashores, habis, or mosques properties, tribal lands, forest land, desert, uncultivated or ownerless lands, or bearing land and escheated property. The department is advised that practically all of the land within the 10-kilometer zones, especially at Tangier, is either guiche land or seashore. Consequently, there will appear to be little or no land lying within the 10-kilometer zones, which may be subject to provide ownership without the consent of the Moorish government. Moreover, and we're going to get down to the important at the very last of this, is where you're going to get more clarity of the relinquishment. Moreover, while in one paragraph, the regulations recognize that, in fact, under Article 60 of the Act of Algeciras, no authorization is necessary for the sale of lands with certain zones. In this paragraph, the regulations provide that the Qadi, which is the judge, will approve no sale made to the foreigner unless the authorization, according to the regulations, has been granted by the Magzin, or the officials of the Moorish government. It would seem, therefore, that if the regulations are correctly understood, an interpretation has been given in Articles to Article 60, which its terms are not ordinarily bear. By the same regulations, the Moroccan government reserves that the right to annul or revise any deeds of so-called inalienable property. So the Moroccan government must annul or revise the deeds. Okay, we can't do nothing unless we're an actual acknowledged Moroccan government. Okay, so it's telling us right there, no type of organization, no doing business as an organization. It is not saying, it ain't saying nothing about no organization. These is one government talking to another government saying, hey, look, Moroccan laws, ain't nobody getting them, right? Especially the United States government, but we only gonna listen to a Moroccan government. Point blank period. We ain't doing nothing else unless it's a Moroccan government. So what we gonna do? Learn government. Okay. Well, what's their stipulations? What are their instructions? Well, the United Nations, right? That the same thing they're a part of. So the department is advised that much of the Guiche or seashore property, as well as other lands situated within the zones above mentioned, has long been held by private individuals under deeds legally obtained by the authorization of responsible agents of the Moxen. So the land has been held by private individuals, private corporations, right? Private individuals, or people operating these corporations, private individuals, under deeds legally, not lawfully, but legally obtained with the authorization of the responsible agents of the Moxen. So the responsible agents of basically dirty Moors. You got to see the wordplay. They didn't say, they referred to Moxen, which is a Moorish word, which refers to the officials of a Moroccan government, the Moxen. But it said this land is being held by private individuals, right, under deeds legally obtained with the authorization of the Moxen, Moroccan government official. Hold on, whoa. So we talking about Muhammad V. We talking about people that's currently undermining the Moroccan government, quiet as kept, that nobody knows about, right? I.e., the whole judges that know about the Moors, but rather would uplift them being a judge on TV, et cetera, right? So they can't even be true citizens of another government without the permission of Moroccan government. Everybody just ran off. Said, okay, I'm gonna just kind of slide over here. Unlawfully, however life just leads us. Like, no, let's get back to order, right? So in view of this circumstance, it is difficult to believe that it is the intention of the Moroccan government to consider the regulations as retroactive in the operations, as thereby divesting or giving opportunity to divest rights in land legally acquired or officially confirmed by Moroccan Moxen agents. So they're saying it's hard to believe that y'all got here because y'all did this lawfully. Y'all ain't talking to no Moroccan government. It's hard for us to believe this. In view of this circumstance, it is difficult to believe that it is the intention, or wait, I just read that. The proposed regulations, as understood by the department, further provide in effect that no transfer of land will be authorized until the different Moorish intermediaries have stated that no government rights are infringed. So Moorish intermediaries are people who have been keeping the bridge between us and our government. Who is that? That's France. That's United Nations. That's everybody who been saying something, right? So even Germany had a little input. So this provision probably has in view the carrying out of that part of Article 60 of the Algeciras Act, which stipulates that before authorizing the execution of deeds transferring property, the Qadi, which is the judge, will have to satisfy himself of the validity of the title and conformity of the Mohammedan law. So he would have to basically conform the Mohammedan law, right? Um, the department is, however, advised that the records of lands titles, that advised that the record of land titles in Morocco are very incomplete, and that this provision of the regulations may be used to delay indefinitely transfers of property in which the Moorish government has in fact no legal or equitable rights. As a further restriction upon the right of land ownership, it is reported that, notwithstanding the provisions of Article 60 of the Algeciras Act representing the acquisition of land, so we talk more about what the act is about, the acquisition of land within stated zones around the open ports in certain other towns. The Sultan, about a year ago, issued 2 decrees imposing military servitudes upon land situated within a radius of 250 meters around towns and fortified quarters within certain enumerated districts. It appears that certain habes or mosque properties are alleged to have been irregularly disposed of in the past to persons subject to foreign jurisdiction who hold these properties either without regular title thereto or by which virtue of doubtful contracts. So either way is something sketchy as to why they got this land, so called. What was that? Excuse me. It goes to say that it goes to say that the Algeciras Conference took formal note of this situation, and by Article 3 of the Algeciras Act, charged by the diplomatic body at Tangier to solve these questions equitably in accord with the special commissioner with whom his Sharifian Majesty may be pleased to designate to that effect. This stipulation does not appear to have been carried out. And this page actually goes into. We don't have to read this whole page, honestly, because the point that I had to make at the bottom of this just refers to American citizens and proteges in Morocco. So it gives a difference saying proteges in Morocco or people who acknowledge themselves in Morocco, protected by Morocco, still, while by their own treaties, making them more subjects, saying, hey, you're going to have, even as a stateless person later on down the road, you're going to have some type of fallback to this, and you can wake yourself somehow from this standpoint. You're going to have some type of protection, even as a stateless person, set up by the United Nations, right? So American citizens are not the same as proteges in Morocco. American citizens are Americans. Moors are Moors nationals, right? In this standpoint, they're proteges, subjects only, because they don't have their government. Who can't be a national, U.S. national, No, no, we're not just talking about being a national of any government, a national of your own government, right? What is a What is a U.S. citizen? What is a U.S. subject? U.S. anything, American anything. No parts of it. Complete independence and sovereignty. Your word is your word and mine is mine, right? So, American citizen and proteges in Morocco, right? So, in this page, just to give everybody, kind of an update, what happened. It's more just about how the Sultan set the whole empire up in a certain way by the act of Algeciras, um, and it's drawn out limitations, right, as it's been doing the whole time. So it says the department is not. Well, we just gonna kind of skip to the bottom because all of this is pretty much saying the same stuff. Um, so let's skip down to the highlighted points, and you can screenshot it if you like. And I'm just doing this to speed up class. As the expense involved, I'm starting right here. As the expense involved in such proceedings was prohibitive to the American claimant, the department has long desired that this case, which has been a source of misunderstanding and diplomatic correspondence for many years, should be disposed of by settlement between the two governments. So when the two governments, the American government, right, the United States American government, and the Moroccan government, establish this for themselves, then only then will this be set at rest. Can all of what's said, can all of what Moors hoped that they relinquish jurisdiction, so that means they got to get the fuck out. Yeah. In common sense, that means they got to get the fuck out, right? But since we didn't learn international law, we didn't see the other side of the story. So this got to be settled between the two governments, right? So the foregoing statement covers the more important matters under discussions between this government and that of Morocco. It's being talking about this United States, talking about France when it says this government, because this is France writing this response. So when it says this government, it's talking about French government and that of Morocco. So it's talking about we got to discuss with France. Why? Power of attorney. Okay, we got to align ourselves to say, look, all right, we need our stuff back. All this stuff we hear now, right? There are other matters which have given rise to diplomatic response, but they may be reserved for future discussion if need be, i.e., right now, because this is in the 1950s, or when we get our more states online and together, just as the colonies did. The 13 states came one. Now they United States of America. Hence, our placeholder name is United States of Morocco, but you'll have your own state, more state government personally, right? Part and parcel, even though you're part and parcel to the government, right? It's the Holy Trinity type of effect. So the present review embraces matters that touch the maintenance of American commercial interests in Morocco. So we're talking about the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, amity and commerce. Okay, so this is everything what we've been talking about, right? So, and the protection of the liberty and property of American citizens and proteges in that country. So all in this paragraph is giving us all the answers, pretty much. The American citizens and proteges. So are Moors American citizens? No. Nope. You're not American citizens. How are we American citizens? By law. We're not talking about by influence of anything else unless it's law, Moroccan law, right? So, and that's hard for a lot of people to see because a lot of people under the influence of Noble Drali who brought this to our realization, right? But they don't see the infiltration. They can't call out who was the person that cleaned up the temples, right? They can't call that out because nobody did that. Only a state government can do that, truthfully. You know how? By enacting laws as time goes by, as they develop, people who are deemed as outlaws are going to be put where people who want to be outlaws are put. Unfortunately, that's called jail, right? We're going to do that to some of our own people who, unfortunately, don't want to follow the law, thinking their way is all they need is the Moroccan flag and the realization of who they are, which is partially true, but you got to realize how you got here in international law, not just historical books from the opinions of a random English person who partially knows themselves and knows none of the lawful aspect. You see, so American citizens and proteges in that country, and it is for the purpose of removing any points of controversy in these particulars and bringing about an adjustment to them that this government, animated with a favorable disposition toward the reforms which the French Protectorate is designed to ensure, has addressed itself to an exposition of question as to it which desires to reach a definite understanding and settlement as a preliminary to or incident of the recognition in due and proper form of the fundamental change involved in the establishment of the foreign governmental regime in the Sharifian Empire. So basically saying the French Protectorate is basically here to indicate realignment, right? In further videos, I might um, start doing random history nights to where I'll bring up several books and talk more about the history of the empire so we can see the life of the sultans, the mindset of the sultans, the reality, right? Because as stated below, who would have knew that in the early 1900s, Sultan Abdul Aziz would, who things un the unthinkable. I mean, when I read the book, according to the book that was created in the early 1900s, I believe 1910. So it was a real life, you know, observation going on here that pretty much a child is a sultan, right? So, I mean, the guy had according to the book, built a railroad from his house to his garden, which was a half a mile away. So you getting on the train to drive a half a mile away with the money for the government, with the money for the government, time and time again. So yeah, just imagine the work, the it's crazy. But so at the time, 1913, right? The Treaty of Fez was in 1912. We had Noble Drali in 1913 basically working on the inside, while France was working on the international side. Okay. So if Noble Drali couldn't get people to wake up to, do certain things then, because not only was international law not set up enough, but you had to wake up everybody in every state just as we have to do today. Okay, hold on. We just gonna settle with this pebble right here, right? Because before Noble Drali even got a chance to write a state constitution, he was murdered. He was assassinated. So we, you know, So when we hear people saying we got the key by Noble Drew Ali to get the land back, et cetera, et cetera. Just ask them to just like what you waiting on. Just do it. Like, what you got us waiting on anyway for? Just do it. All right. So this is where the juicy part comes at the end. In conclusion, it may be proper to call attention to the situation of the American missionaries in Morocco, just as Noble Drew Ali did, right? What he said, all true American citizens, Moors, and something else he has said, differentiating three different parties, calling all true American citizens who wish to enforce their government and Moors who wish to enforce the Constitution, meaning your Constitution, voting at your own poll, that American missionaries in Morocco, right, given a differentiation between two different lanes. The missionaries have 4 years labored in this field, including, so it's the missionaries. Who are the missionaries? Well, now we're talking about the more subjects who thinks they're Americans, as well as the so-called the Americans who just the white people who just fed up. They fed up with the government. They want the government to fall, stuff like that. So they say, okay, well, if you tired of government, enforce the Constitution, enforce your American Constitution, enforce that to help us get out of here, so we can help see some things. That's the least you can do. As far as the more subjects who are still deemed as United States American citizens, even though in law they're not, right? Everybody calls them that. So who we talking about? The Moorish subjects, the Moorish proteges. Who is that? That was Noble Drew Ali and them at that point because they didn't have a government. So who we talking about in this paragraph? Well, let's see. These missionaries have for years labored in this field, including the districts inhabited by the Berber tribes, and the department is advised by and have maintained and continue to maintain friendly and mutually satisfactory relations with the authorities of the country. So who is the authorities of the country? It kicked me out. My apologies, everybody. My apologies. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Islam, yes.
Okay, right on. It's still recording. Good deal. Okay. So it says they kept a friendly relationship with authorities of the country, right? So we talking about people seeing Bay, we talking about Noble Drew Ali, everybody who tried to show somebody the authority in a harmonious relation. Had to show us who we are in a harmonious way, in some type of way. They have expressed themselves as most appreciative of the courteous and all-kind treatment accorded to them by the French officials in Morocco. This government therefore ventures to express the earnest hope that in any recognition of the government of the empire which may be contemplated or in progress, the rights and privileges of these missionaries may be carefully safeguarded, and every facility may be granted them for the prosecution of their worthy and benevolent task, except, okay. So this is again the French to the Secretary of State, okay. Mr. Secretary of State, referring to the oral communications by which I made known to the Department of State the views of my government in respect to the remarks contained in your Excellency's note of February 13th last about Morocco, I have the honor, in compliance with instructions I have received, to upon you of the high value we should attach to the United States, so not the United States of America, the United States, because they using the words interchangeably, government relinquishing, together with its consular courts, its extraterritorial privileges in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. So here we have in the letters from France, who is a strong influence in the United Nations, telling the United States to relinquish jurisdiction, to relinquish together its consular courts. So what are we talking about? They relinquished consular courts. They still have capitulation regime over Moorish subjects and proteges. All they did was do what? Relinquish consular courts. That's a specific thing. That's not everything. That's not relinquishing jurisdiction in totality. That's relinquishing consular courts. Because why? What France is saying that the United States or the United States of America is subject to them too. They're really subject to them if they're controlling Moroccan affairs, being the power of attorney, then think of what the United States is to them. You see? So if the United States of America is subordinate to the Moroccan government and the Moroccan government failed and France really taking them, the United States of America should be saying absolutely nothing right now. But okay, we comply. That's it. So when we talk about relinquishing jurisdiction, let's get this clear. Snapshot this screen. Correct the Moors when they are speaking on this. The letter from the French ambassador to the Secretary of State, United States of America, relinquish consular courts, its extraterritorial privileges in the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. In the French zone of the Sharifian Empire. It's specific right there. So by court orders, they relinquish jurisdiction of consular courts in the French zone. Remember, there are, by law, there's still Moors in the Spanish zone, even though they've covered up that as United States of America. You see, so many holes that are going to have to be aligned for everybody to see. That way, nobody has any trick bags to go to. Okay. Your Excellency's note above mentioned held out that the prospect that the United States would cede to our request and record its accession in due and proper form, but pointed out a certain number of topics as to which favorable assurances were requested. So it's a number of things, basically, as I just stated, they got to be handled. Not just the fact that we got to proclaim nationality. It's a few laws we got to enact. There's a few things we got to set up before we enact certain laws. It's a few things we got to do in every area, pretty much. We got to establish four corners in every area, pretty much, in order for us to just go. You don't have to know everything about international law. We got to know enough about our standpoint so we can move on nonetheless. Okay, so that's why we study specific things and not just any random thing because the word more is attached to it or law is attached to it. So, as to the matter of form, my government wishes me to submit your excellency, the enclosed draft of declaration, which is in its opinion, fits the situation that it should be charged or cleared, I am told that the declaration has already been signed by the Russian and Spanish governments and that other adhesions are forthcoming. As to the several points mentioned in your Excellency's note, I may, as I've already done by word of mouth, assure you that the government of the Republic is quite ready to settle in the most friendly spirit the questions of interest to the United States and Morocco that may still be pending. Among these, that of the proteges naturally ceases. That of the proteges naturally ceases to be of any practical importance to the powers that agree to recognize our new courts, the text or the tertib text being besides already paid by foreigners. Okay, so that's basically talking about um, our future tax experience, in which we'll have to look into how our government is to grow, how we're to tax the United States. Right, taxation is pretty much the main way for a government to grow. So how are they gonna be paying rent? That's one of the first things. That's one of the first corners. Right, a government gonna have to get money. We ain't talking about good money from our pockets. We talking about money from theirs based on law, OPM. Right. So what was that? Um, okay. As to the right of aliens to own real estate, it has not been restricted by any Sharifian regulations. All that has been done was to take a few urgent measures having relation to strategy or prompted by the necessity by checking speculation in land intended for public use. The complaint of the Vacuum Oil Company against the customs treatment according to its products have not been brought to the party. Okay. There's nothing special on this page. I forgot to take this out. So that's it for pretty much that, unless you want to take a picture of this and finish it off. Um, so we can see that basically, before I get into that picture, we're wrapping this up, that the letters between the United States and France is an argument that started off as an argument or debates, going back and forth, trying to check each other's position and say, hey, look, France, you don't have no power to say or butt in on this. Okay. Yes, we recognize the treaties, but guess what? Everything comes by way of our permission now. We the sovereigns now. We holding stuff down by 9/10 possessions. But they'll never have 10/10 or holistic possession because they have not been truthful. They always don't have to do the runaround, right? So France said, look, we the power attorneys, and the court can at least say something about that, right? They said, yep, okay. Well, let's go back to the United States. Okay, well, since France can only go so far, what can we do about where they stop at and where United States can stop or go? Well, it looks like the situation can only be solved between two governments: United States government, United States of America, and Moroccan governments. So as soon as Moroccan governments come online as a central government, one entity being moved by several states, then, only then, will this be settled, right? So that was the conclusion of all of this. What they label us as, if you don't have a Moorish state government, they label you as, no matter what you say, no matter what you send in, no matter if you say you proclaim a nationality or not, if it ain't obvious that you have your own government and don't need them, and all you gotta do is enforce your laws for the upcoming of yours, okay, well that looks like God got your back. You're being protected by Allah, the covenant, the treaty, right? So we'll further get into this case. Um, I'm not sure if it'll be next class. I think I'll do the metaphysics of law next class. I'm not quite sure yet, but we'll soon be sticking around for more of the United States in America, the actual case, right? United States of America in Morocco. Okay. And this again is a picture for those who haven't seen it before. Is thanks to ANPAC, ANPAG, and New Mecca, who have pretty much been the leaders, the mentors, the first three more state governments to show us the way as to what needs to be done. I credit this setup of this page right here to them, as there's no other setup to give us what needs to be done just as in 1, 2, 3. Like you have to go to this treaty, that treaty, this treaty, that treaty, et cetera, and read through it all, find out what you're doing, all that. So, they've helped us see it clear. And so this is what's needed in order for you to establish your own more state government. So if you would like to screenshot that, you can, as well as you will have to follow the 4 qualifications of what makes a state government international law. And that is a permanent population, a defined territory, the capacity to enter in relations with other states, and an actual government, i.e. your 3 branches of government, etc. So that those 4 qualifications and these what's on the screen is what you'll need. Okay. So real quick, you like to screenshot this, you can. This is from this is the Article 15 I was telling you about right here. And this is the explanation of that. Okay. So when Muhammad V met up with the President of the United States, Roosevelt, right? What was all this about? Well, as noted, a U.S. note of March 17th, 1959, addressed to the Moroccan Ministry of Foreign Affairs, referred to a note of the ministry dated October 8th, 1958, in which the embassy had been informed that the Moroccan government had decided to strike all prescriptions relating to Moroccan nationality from the text of the Madrid Convention. So, nationality, boom. Morocco said, yo, get rid of that. Hide that. Do something about that. Right? Part of the agreement. That's how we're going to uphold ours. Right? And y'all can stay where y'all at. Because when it came to the Arabs and the Berber situation, or are they Amazigh, that was a whole, they tried to separate, and we can go this over another time. They tried to separate the Arabs and the Amazigh, but they tried to classify us as Berbers. So a lot of times you'll hear them refer to us as Berbers, right? But it's all about stages of realization. That's why they use different words. Okay, so you see they strike all prescriptions or strike the 15th article, right? The United States, the U.S. note said, in part, the government of the United States of America having unilaterally relinquished certain rights in Morocco with the reemergence of Morocco in independence in 1956. So hold on. It said unilaterally, but the treaty is a bilateral treaty. So basically, only one side of this, which was the Sultan, relinquished certain rights in Morocco. The United States don't have that power to do that. So the Sultan relinquished certain rights in Morocco with the emergence of Morocco into independence in 1956. So remember when he went from Sultan, now they're called the Kings, the Kingdom of Morocco. They're no longer Sultans, they're kings. So Moroccan independence came in 1956 when the Sultan turned to king and made it the Kingdom of Morocco, a own a separate government, a third state party, right? Considers that in line with the historical developments of Article 15 of Madrid on the protection of 1880 has become obsolete and without effect. So it's not effective. It's not effective. Dirty Moors. The government of the United States takes due to cognizance, therefore, of action taken by the Moroccan government as set forth in its above cited note, which the United States government understands to refer on the Article 15 of the Madrid Convention on Protection of 1880. What does the Article 15 say? And this is the last picture, I believe. We got one more after this. Any subject of Morocco who has been naturalized in a foreign country and who shall return to Morocco shall, after having remained for a length of time equal to that which shall have been regularly necessary for him to attain such naturalization, choose between entire submission of the laws of the empire and the obligation to quit Morocco, unless it shall be proved that the naturalization of the foreign country was obtained with the consent of the government of Morocco. Foreign naturalization heretofore, acquired by subjects of Morocco, Moroccan subjects, according to the rules established by the laws of each country, shall be continued to them as regard all effects without any restrictions. So when we talk about naturalized, no, we haven't naturalized in holistic sense, in truth, but in fact, yes, we have naturalized. Why? Because we have acquiesced. We haven't said anything. Simply, that's the only reason why we have naturalized or been naturalized to the United States. Why does that? How can we say this more so? Because we're actually more subjects and proteges in actual law, but they say they call us United States citizens, right? So there's always another side of the story that causes another trick bag, because when we go through the process of naturalization, we talk about just like a person coming into the United States, where they got to go to court, they got to raise their right hand, they got to all that type of stuff and say, yes, I'm a United States citizen. Well, none of us did that. So if we talking about by their own government, we haven't done that, but by acquiescence, yes. Right. So they consider us to have been naturalized, not because we truthfully are or have been, but only because we haven't said anything. Okay. Okay. This is a picture of more on when the Sultan met with the presidents in the 1943, 1933, the different times, and established different relations, right? That also had to do with the Arab tribes and the Jews, but mainly with the Moor subjects and proteges. Okay. So that wraps it up for this class. We can pretty much get into anything that y'all would like to bring to the floor. That does wrap up the letter between France and Morocco, or France and the United States, excuse me. We'll go into, like I said before, the case more extensively and get into the Act of Algeciras, the Treaty of Madrid, so we can then learn what specific laws must be enforced and we'll learn throughout the due process of time and law. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, comments, or anything, you can take the floor now.
Islam, excellent class, brother.
Thank you, Mo. Thank you. I appreciate that. And what I'm going to do really is create more snippets, and that way people don't have to listen to the whole 2-hour class or whatever, but people can understand more from a quick snippet. What's really going on. Say a quick 30 seconds or something. You know, because that's the only way we can really X out who's trying to influence. Because there's a certain group of Moors who um, and I'm gonna keep my purity by not releasing no names and stuff right now. You know, I was checked by a good friend of mine who was just basically like, he was like, ignore these fools because you're gonna mess up your impurity. That's what you're supposed to ignore the ignorance. It's in the word itself. So even though it agitates me, we have to establish ourselves in a certain character when we present information. You know, because that's a whole nother story in itself. Because we get spiritual, we talk about that. But so it's a whole nother group basically that's out here infiltrating with just information that's gonna lead you astray. Like seriously, everything sound good until the last minute, and I'm gonna make a whole video about that in particular. But they're really trying to lead people astray. So and I actually might make a video about that tonight, so y'all can watch for that. So, are there any more questions or comments?
Yes, I. So I want to how could you go about and this economy without credit as a
Are you going in and out? I can't really hear you like that.
I said, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I said surviving this economy without credit as a more without utilizing credit or their monetary systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that comes with and for direct experience from a teacher who can really give you direct answer and assistance with that would be J. Jermaine Bay of AMPAC, in which that you can contact them by way of email, set up calls, and have certain questions. And the reason I say that is because they've established for themselves. You know how the United States uses EIN numbers, and you can use an EIN number to move in so many ways, um, get apartments and all that type of stuff. In which the same thing has been done on AMPAC's behalf. They've already established themselves a number similar to the EIN, mimicking basically everything they have to do in an international lawful sense, so that they can do it in an independent and sovereign sense. So that comes after it, obviously. You start your government. That comes obviously after you start your state government. But as far as working with credit, you know, it, it the I, there's two understandings as to how some people see nationality or proclaiming nationality. There's only one way to do this, and that's creating your own government. But some people choose to, entertain the world of authenticating the birth certificate, updating the Social Security, and that way they can use credit in the United States government. So it's still, you pretty much polishing up that crumb that the United States gave you and making it look like a golden crumb, pretty much, because it's really not we working with credit, but credit on whose behalf, on what limitations, et cetera, are we really trying to work for? Is what I'm pretty much getting at. So now it's pretty much of your own willpower. Are you going to people? Why she keep going? Et cetera, so that you can create your own, system of credit, et cetera, and not rely on anybody else. So now that we've established ourselves to do so, it's all about where you choose, what arena you choose to entertain. So so it's all about what you choose to entertain. Okay. So it could be, a lot of our problems, we wish to be direct and fast and solving about, in which a lot of this stuff can overturn for you overnight if you have the proper perception, the willpower, to send in the state constitution. That way, when they get it, it does change for you. Your card, nationality card, turns to a state ID overnight. There is no, oh well, you gotta wait and all this type of stuff to be who you are. It's like, nah. As soon as you put on people on notice, is when you get to express everything that you wish to express. But there's a certain fashion that it has to go about. So off top, you on a certain pinnacle, saying you can do what you want to do, not do what you want to do. But according to the laws, you can now exercise human rights and all that. You know, but with anything that takes time and due process. So it's all about your aim, your setup, your position. You know, did that answer your question?
Yes. I still have more questions about it, but you kind of answered it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can keep going with the questions if you like.
You had said something about, which was my next question, about basically how people want to authenticate their birth certificate and use like the social security card, and I'm basically don't want to do that. I want to do the opposite of that, like moving without the birth certificate and not utilizing social security card.
Yeah, yeah. We can speak on our own, on on a phone call outside of this class, and get more direct on where you are and how you can move specifically, because it may be more that's already doing this where you are. A lot of times when you reach out to AMPAC, they'll give you a list of who's who in your area on the same wave, and that way you make your life a whole lot easier.
Okay.
Islam, who you keep referring to impact? Tell me what that means.
AMPAC is a Moorish state government and was the first Moorish state government to be a Moorish state government. And they basically been recognized as such. They have auto insurance already established, unlike anybody else, et cetera, to where, they're already acknowledged and moving like a government. So you can look more up about them. They teach a lot of law classes. If you type in Allodium Moorish Pradium Ante Colorado on YouTube, and let me see if I can put that in the chat right quick or something.
You say it's in
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the chat. Okay, I'll just put it in the chat.
Okay, it's gone.
Yeah, you can't type in ANPAC in the YouTube. You won't be able to find them. You gotta type in the whole thing. And also go down. You got to scroll down to the bottom in order to read. Go through law class number 1, and then go in that order.
Okay.
Islam. Who are the other two states that have the whole setup as far as the Moorish government as well, Mo?
ANPAG, which is Allodium Moorish Praetorium Ante, Georgia. This is very close to Colorado. They were the third Moorish state government to come online. And the other one is New Mecca. And that's basically the Oregon territory.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
So if I wanted to reach out to the one in Georgia, are they all the one in Georgia is connected to this one in Colorado?
Oh shoot. Hold on. Let me charge my phone. Oh, let me charge my phone. Yeah, charge my phone. I was about to check. What's going on? Okay. Okay, what was the question? I forgot the question.
I was just checking to see if you said, I thought you said there was one in Georgia. So are there different chapters around the country?
Oh yeah. It's really they all communicate with each other. They all keep in touch as we should.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the one in Georgia, um, I can give you the prime minister's number, Abdul Bey, who basically, if you're in Georgia, so-called Georgia, Oregon, or Colorado, if you're within those specific territories, you can reach out to these people and actually become member or citizens, nationals, of these actual more state governments. So
Oh,
you won't
okay.
have to, worry about it.
Well, I'm actually in the Tennessee territory, but Georgia's. I don't know anyone here that
Mhm.
recognize more. So I'm looking to connect with other Moors in the vicinity.
Yeah, I can. Is there? Let me see. Is do you have do you follow me on social media?
I'm sure I do because I can't even remember how I got to this. I'm not even sure how I got to this Telegram, so I must have connected with you on Instagram.
Okay. What we can do is if you take down my email and email me, just say something like, "Hey, this was me. I was really asking a question about ANPAC or something." You can just email me, and that way I can give you the information to get in touch with the Prime Minister of ANPAC.
Okay. Yep. Address is
Yeah. The email address is AQILZ as in zebra Bay at gmail.com.
okay.
That's Akil Z Bay at gmail.com.
Okay, Islam. Thank you.
And they also have a page you can go to on YouTube as well. It's called Impact Media.
It's called Impact. What's that?
Ampag Media, AMPAG Media.
Okay, great. My apologies for getting here late, but I'll try to make it.
Oh no, you good. I'm glad you're here. You know. So is there any more questions or comments?
Yes.
Good. Well, if ain't nobody got nothing to say, I'll take that as a sign if I did my job for the day.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you.
now
Okay.
in class like that. So I'll speak to y'all next class.
All right. Peace and love.
All right, peace, Morris.